Adama's eyes sparkled like the stars, but the villagers feared her. They whispered behind her back, crossed the road whenever they saw her, and never invited her to their gatherings. She did not understand why. She had done nothing wrong. Yet, the village knew a secret, a terrible curse she carried, a curse that made her different, a curse that made people afraid. The villagers said Adama was born from the river goddess, Inmiri, and that no human could love her without suffering. They claimed strange things happened when she cried, but Adama had never seen it herself. She had never cried in front of anyone. She had no reason to, until the night of her wedding. That was the night everything changed. The night that turned her from a bride into an outcast. The night that made the villagers call her the woman who cried out snakes. Adama was married to Dyke, the strongest hunter in the village. He was tall, with arms like tree trunks and a voice as deep as thunder. The wedding was grand, filled with drumming, singing, and dancing that lasted until the stars filled the sky. Adama was happy. She thought she had found love, but when the guests left and the night grew quiet, Dyke showed a different side of himself. His voice was no longer warm, his hands, once gentle, turned rough. He pulled at her clothes and whispered, "You belong to me now." Adama's heart pounded. Something about the way Dyke spoke frightened her. He was not the kind man she had married that morning. His grip on her wrist was tight, almost painful. She tried to pull away, but he held on. "You are my wife now," he said. "You will do as I say." A lump formed in Adama's throat. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she did not want to cry. She did not want to seem weak. But as Dyke's grip tightened, she could no longer hold it in. A single tear rolled down her cheek. The tear landed on the mat beneath them. But instead of sinking into the woven fibers, something else happened. A small black snake slithered out from the tear, twisting its tiny body and hissing. Dyke stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" he gasped. Adama, just as startled, wiped at her face. Another tear fell, and another snake appeared. This one was bigger, its scales gleaming in the dim candlelight. More tears spilled from her eyes, and with each drop, another snake was born. The room filled with hissing, their small tongues flicking in the air. Dyke screamed. He tried to run, but the snakes were too fast. They slithered toward him, coiling around his legs, sinking their fangs into his skin. He swatted at them, but more kept coming. Adama sobbed, unable to stop the flood of tears, unable to stop the creatures that came with them. Dyke's screams turned into gurgles, his body twisting in pain, then silence. When Adama opened her eyes, Dyke was lying still, his body swollen, his face frozen in horror. The snakes had vanished, leaving behind nothing but their deadly bite marks. The next morning, the villagers found Dyke's lifeless body. They gathered around Adama's hut, their eyes wide with fear. "She killed him!" someone shouted. "She is cursed!" another cried out. The elders arrived, their faces grim. The oldest among them shook his head. "This is an abomination," he said. "No woman should cry out snakes. She is not one of us." The villagers whispered among themselves, stepping further away from her. Adama's heart ached. She wanted to explain, but how could she? Even she did not understand what had happened. She had only cried, and he had died. The elders held a meeting that evening, sitting under the great Irako tree, their voices low and serious. The villagers gathered around, waiting for their decision. "She cannot stay here," one elder said. "If she cries again, who else will die?" The chief nodded. "We must banish her." Adama fell to her knees. "Please," she begged. "I don't want this curse. I don't know why it happened," but the elders did not listen. The people of Obodo believed in spirits and curses, and to them, Adama was dangerous. She had to leave before more people died. With only a small bundle of food and a wrapper tied around her shoulders, Adama was sent away. She walked out of the village, her feet dragging in the dust. The people she once called friends turned their backs on her. Even the children who had once played near her home now hid behind their mothers. She wanted to cry, but she held it in. She could not risk calling forth more snakes. So, without a single tear, Adama disappeared into the dark forest, leaving her home behind forever. Adama wandered into the forest, her bare feet sinking into the damp earth. The towering trees surrounded her, their branches whispering secrets in the wind. She had no home, no family, no place to return to. The pain of rejection sat heavy in her chest, but she refused to cry. She could not risk it, not again. The deeper she walked, the darker the forest became. Shadows stretched across the narrow path, and strange sounds rustled in the undergrowth. Adama moved carefully, listening for danger. She had heard stories of spirits and wild beasts lurking in these woods, waiting for lost souls like hers. She pressed forward, hunger gnawing at her stomach. She had brought only a small bundle of food, dried yams and a handful of nuts, but it would not last long. She needed shelter, water, a way to survive. As the sun began to set, she found a clearing near a small stream. The water shimmered under the fading light, cool and inviting. She dropped to her knees and cupped her hands, drinking deeply. The fresh taste soothed her parched throat, offering a moment of relief. A rustling noise made her freeze. Adama's heart pounded as she turned. At the edge of the clearing stood an old woman, hunched and frail, her long gray hair tangled with leaves. She wore a faded wrapper and held a wooden staff taller than herself. Her milky white eyes stared at Adama, unblinking. "No one comes as deep into the forest," the woman said, her voice raspy yet firm. Adama swallowed hard. "I had no choice." The woman stepped closer, studying her. "I know who you are." Adama tensed. "You do." The old woman nodded. "The cursed one. The girl who cries out snakes." Shame burned through Adama, but she lifted her chin. "I didn't ask for this." "No one asked for their fate," the woman replied. "But you have a choice now." Adama frowned. "A choice?" The woman sat on a fallen log, motioning for Adama to sit as well. Hesitantly, she obeyed. "Your mother," the woman said, "made a bargain with Inmiri, the river goddess." Adama's breath hitched. "My mother? She wished for a child, one as beautiful as the moon, as strong as the sun. The goddess granted her wish. But such gifts come with a price." Adama's fingers dug into the fabric of her wrapper. "What price?" The woman's white eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "Your tears. They are not your own. They carry the weight of the goddess's power, turning sorrow into life and death." A shiver ran down Adama's spine. She had always felt different, but she had never imagined this. "Can it be undone?" she whispered. The woman was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Perhaps, but only one being can change what the gods have made. Inmiri." The woman nodded. "To break the curse, you must return to the river where it all began. Seek the goddess herself." Adama's chest tightened. The river was far, deep within forbidden lands. No one dared go there. And if the goddess had cursed her, why would she lift it? "What if she refuses to help me?" Adama asked. The old woman tilted her head. "Then you must decide, live as you are, or find another way to control what is inside you." Adama looked down at her hands. She did not want to hurt anyone else. She did not want to live in fear. If there was even the slightest chance to change her fate, she had to take it. She stood, determination settling in her bones. "Where do I find the river?" The old woman pointed east. "Follow the stream until the waters glow under the moonlight. There, you will find your answer." Adama took a deep breath, glancing at the darkening forest. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she could not turn back now. She bowed her head in thanks. "I will find Inmiri." The woman smiled, her wrinkled face softening. "Then may the spirits guide you, child." As Adama stepped away from the clearing, the wind carried the woman's final words through the trees. Be careful what you ask of the gods. They always take more than they give. Adama followed the stream, the cool water flowing beside her like a whispering guide. The forest was dense, its towering trees casting long shadows under the moon's glow. The journey was not easy. Thorny bushes clawed at her skin, and the night was filled with the distant howls of unseen creatures. Yet she pressed on, her heart set on finding the river goddess Inmiri. Hours passed, and exhaustion weighed on her limbs. But then in the distance, she saw it, the river that glowed under the moonlight. It shimmered, an unnatural silver blue, as though touched by something beyond this world. Adama hesitated at the water's edge, her reflection rippling under the night sky. This was a place. Taking a deep breath, she knelt by the river. Her hands trembled as she dipped them into the cool water. "Great Inmiri," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have come to seek your help." The river remained still. Silence filled the air, pressing down on her like a heavy weight. Doubt crept into her mind. What if the goddess refused to appear? What if this was all for nothing? Then the water stirred. A ripple formed, then another, growing into waves. The river rose, twisting into the shape of a woman. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, her eyes glowing like stars. Her presence was otherworldly, powerful, and ancient. "You dare call upon me," the goddess's voice echoed, both serene and terrifying. Adama swallowed hard. "I seek freedom from my curse," she said, keeping her voice steady. Inmiri circled her, studying her with an unreadable gaze. "Your mother asked for beauty and strength," the goddess said. "She did not ask for the price." "She didn't know," Adama argued. "You tricked her." A cold laugh rippled through the air. "I gave what was asked," Inmiri said, "and you have been blessed. Your tears create life." Adama clenched her fists. "They bring death." The goddess tilted her head. "A gift can be a curse, and a curse can be a gift. The balance must be kept." Adama took a deep breath. "Then tell me, how do I break it?" Inmiri's glowing eyes studied her for a long moment. Then she spoke. "There is only one way. You must give up all sorrow." Adama frowned. "What do you mean?" "You must never cry again. Not for pain, not for joy, not for love. Your heart must be as dry as the desert." Adama's stomach twisted. How could she live without sadness, but also without happiness? Could she truly give up every feeling? But if she didn't, she would never be free. She had to decide. Adama took a deep breath. "I will do it." The goddess smiled, lifting her hand. A bright light surrounded Adama, warm and heavy. She gasped as something was pulled from deep within her chest. A glowing ember, small but powerful. The moment it left her body, she felt different. The pain of losing her home, the fear of the curse, it was gone. But so was something else. A strange stillness filled her. She did not feel sad, but she did not feel happy either. The goddess stepped back. "It is done." Adama blinked. She expected relief, but nothing came. No happiness, no sorrow, just emptiness. Inmiri's voice was softer now. "Go. Your curse is gone." Adama turned away from the river, her steps light but hollow. She had gotten what she wanted, but why did it feel like she had lost something even greater? Adama returned to the village after many years, her steps silent but sure. The people gathered, whispering as she walked through the familiar dirt paths. Some faces were wary, others curious. No one had expected to see her again. She felt no fear, no excitement, no longing. The emotions that once ruled her heart were gone, leaving only an empty calm. The chief stepped forward, his gaze filled with questions. "Why have you returned?" Adama met his eyes. "I am no longer cursed." The villagers murmured among themselves. The elders conferred in hushed voices before the village healer stepped forward. He held a small blade, its edge glinting in the sunlight. "If you are truly free," he said, "then you will not cry." Adama nodded. She understood their fear. They needed proof. The healer took her hand and pressed the blade lightly against her palm. A thin line of blood surfaced, but her face remained unchanged. A tear welled up in her eye, rolled down her cheek, and landed on the ground. Nothing happened. The villagers gasped, watching closely. No snakes appeared. No curse was unleashed. The healer turned to the chief and nodded. "She speaks the truth." Relief spread through the crowd. Women embraced her. Children reached out to touch her hands, and men murmured blessings. She was one of them again. Adama should have felt joy. She should have felt relief. But there was nothing. Only the quiet weight of knowing she would never feel anything again. She built a home, married a kind man, and had children. She worked alongside the other women, laughed when it was expected, and comforted others in their sorrow. But inside, she remained untouched by it all. She lived, but she did not feel alive. One evening, an old friend sat beside her. "You are here," she said softly, "but it is as if you are not truly with us." Adama did not answer. She did not know how to explain the emptiness inside her. That night, she walked to the river, the place where it all began. The moon shone brightly on the water, and she knelt by the edge, staring at her reflection. She touched her face, tracing the path where her tears had once brought forth snakes. Then, for the first time in years, she let a tear fall. The water rippled. A shadow moved beneath the surface. A great serpent, black as the night, rose from the depths, its golden eyes burning with power. Adama gasped as it coiled around her, its presence neither warm nor cold. She did not resist. The serpent wrapped around her, pulling her into the water. The last thing she saw was the moon above, shining cold and distant. Then darkness. When the villagers searched for her the next morning, they found no trace. Only the river remained, whispering its ancient secrets. Some said the goddess had reclaimed her. Others believed she had become part of the water itself, forever bound to the river's depths. But sometimes, when the moon was high and the waters glowed silver, the villagers swore they could see her reflection in the river, watching, waiting, free at last.